Sunday's Elite Eight matchup between Creighton and San Diego State. This is going to be from Louisville, Kentucky, and Creighton opens up as the favorite. They open up at DraftKings as a 1-point favorite. This is going up to 1.5 in a lot of spots. I'm seeing some straight 2s coming out, and DraftKings set the initial opener of 136 with the total, and that is nosediving, as currently the market has anywhere between 132.5 and 133.5, and I'm smack dab in the middle. I set my total at a 133. If you have access to DraftKings, hopefully you took a look at the under, because you've already got yourself a minimum of 2.5 points of line value, perhaps even more, depending upon your book. And it's a spot where I'm going to be taking a look to see where this line continues to go. Perhaps we see a little bit of buyback. This gets back to a 134, and I'd be taking a look at the under. Perhaps this continues to go even further, down to like a 132, and that'd be my buy point on the over. But I think the wrong team is favored here. I'd like San Diego State to be able to win this game outright. I did set them as my 1.5 point favorite because I was talking about San Diego State. This defense has really been second to very, very few in all of college basketball since the turn of the new year. They entered into their game against Alabama in the top 20 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Creighton, they're sort of the team that does everything relatively solid, but I would argue that they don't necessarily do one thing great. And I do think that when you take a look at Creighton, it is very important to note that some of their metrics and some of their numbers, if you take a look at the overall season, they're a little bit warped. And the reason why is because Ryan Kalkbrenner was out of the fold throughout much of the month of December. He was out due to illness, and that really caused Creighton to have a little bit of a rough go of it. I believe that they had lost 4, maybe even 5 straight games in that time span. When Ryan Kalkbrenner has been out there, he's a 7-foot center that's able to give you blocks. He's able to pop threes. You need him to sell hot dogs at the hot dog stand. He's able to do it for you. You're in relatively good shape there. So I do think that this is a Creighton bunch that is better than what their metrics show. But with San Diego State, you've got a lot of guys that just contribute to the cause. They do a nice job of rebounding, as they're a top 25 team in the country in terms of rebound rate, despite the fact that you don't really have anyone that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. You do have a trio of guys that entered into Friday, though, having given you between 5 and 5.9 rebounds per game, as Jaden Ledee, Kashawn Johnson, along with Nathan Menza, all check that box. And you've got, as we saw in that game against Alabama, someone that can be a primary scorer in Darian Trammell. Trammell entered into Friday having averaged just 9.5 points per game, was able to facilitate with 3 assists, 1.3 steals per game. But keep in mind, this guy 2 seasons ago at Seattle during the 2020-21 season averaged over 20 points per game, 17.3 points per contest this last season. Really good story. Began his career at the City College of San Francisco and has really been able to rise up and become one of the most integral parts of a team that has made the Elite Eight. And for Creighton, big fear with them is that they don't have the depth that San Diego State does as well. When it comes to Creighton, you've got your nice starting 5, and you're able to look to Fran Farabelle a little bit coming off the bench, but if anyone gets into foul trouble, that's going to be a big issue. And thus far in the tournament, it's been good matchups for Creighton. Princeton is not a team that's going to be putting you in foul trouble. There's no question about that. When it comes to their first round matchup, things weren't necessarily too harebrained, too rambunctious on that front either, as they were able to get by relatively easily against NC State, a team that they play relatively fast, but they're not necessarily too physical. So I do feel like the path for Creighton to be able to get to this spot has been very favorable for them. And now I do think that this is the toughest matchup for Creighton, going up against the San Diego State team that they're going to get up in your grill. They're going to do the little things when it comes to defense. Creighton, a relatively mid-tempo team at San Diego State. It's not that they're necessarily playing at a snail's pace. 266th in the country certainly isn't fast by any stretch of the imagination. They just force a lot of misses. But if we continue to have this total get bogged down like I am seeing, because right now we're getting down as low as a 132.5 personally, with a total between 132.5 and 133.5, I would rather have a 133.5 under rather than a 132.5 over. But I do think that these are going to be drying up as things go along, and I could see this very well being a total that ends being 132 or less, which would put me on the over in this spot, because I do think that you're going to probably be doing for a little bit of late game fouling, and I do think that a game that involves a lot of fouls due to the depth, that favors San Diego State quite a bit more. So I do like San Diego State in this spot outright on the money line. At current numbers, the 133.5 that we have at DraftKings, I'd be taking that under, but I'm going to be letting that total marinate.